Hi, and welcome back. As you know, I'm Jean-Paul, and we've been talking about leadership. So before I introduce my next guest, I'd like to tell you a little bit about him. Our guest today is somebody that I have known for most of my life. This is a man who has operated with the highest integrity in every area of his life, and this is a man that God has blessed financially, in influence, in his private life, and in his work life. He's currently a superintendent with a construction firm. He has successfully helped to lead teams in multi-million-dollar projects. He has had the experience of navigating through everything from resource and time management conflicts to interpersonal and even leadership conflicts. So his experience and the wisdom that God has given him, I'm sure, is going to bless you today. So I'd like to welcome Royce Cousins. Thanks for being with us.
Pleasure to be on the show.
Well, I know that your life's pretty busy, that it's not always non-stressful, so I appreciate you taking the time to share your experience and some of that wisdom God's given you.
Nice coat, by the way. Looking good.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, so as I mentioned, we're talking about leadership, and specifically, we're going to talk about delegating properly when it comes to teams. So, Royce, when we say delegating properly, what does that make you think of? And what do you see this doing for a team?
When I think of delegating properly, really, I'm thinking of who fits in the right positions the best. So, in a lot of cases, let me put it like this. Have you ever been in a situation where you know you could do better, but for some reason, everything just doesn't fit? It's going against you. It doesn't work. It's like, I know who I am. I know I could do this. Mm-hmm. What's the problem? And so many times, it's just a bad fit. Like either the people around you aren't really, you don't jive well with them. You don't communicate correctly with them or something. So maybe there may be a personality conflict. Maybe the work is just barely outside of something you do. Like normally it'd be fine, but you're struggling to wrap your brain around some concept. Maybe even there's something going on, an outside influence, and that extra level of attention that you would normally be able to apply to something you can't do right now.
Yeah.
And so if you have a person like that on your team, maybe the solution is that you need to replace that person completely and they're not on your team anymore. But I would rather try first putting them in some place that might fit, and maybe somebody else will fit better.
Gotcha. So kind of a finding or creating the right synergy with your team by making sure that each individual is plugged in to the spot that's the best fit for them. Now, it sounds like from what you were saying that it might be something that an individual is capable of doing, but for whatever reason, you may not even know what the factors are.
Exactly.
It's not clicking. Okay.
So really quick, as people move up, at least in the construction world, you're going to sometimes get put in a position of authority where you don't necessarily have the option to replace people. You just have to do the best you can with what you have. And those moments are incredible training moments because you have, let's say, 5 people that you don't get to replace, but you want to put them in the best places to maximize everybody's productivity. You may not get, all-stars. You may not have an all-star team that can just do everything you ever thought. But it's, just kind of play with things and you work with things. And
it makes me think of working in scaffold. Right? We'd go out in teams of 3, 4, or 5. And one particular refiner that we worked at, it seemed like they were mixing us crews up all the time. And we'd work together for 2 or 3 days. And throughout those few days, we would be actually finding the spot where we fit best with that group of people.
Yeah.
And then right about the time that we got there, they'd mix us all up. We'd have to start over again.
Yeah.
But that's what made me think of, or when you said that, that's what that made me think of.
Real common in construction.
Absolutely. So what are some of the potential impacts of not delegating properly?
I think there's a much, much bigger concept here, but really a lot of what a good leader does is they're mitigating frustration. When a good leader leads, they lead emotions. I know you don't think that sounds like, you might understand that, but a lot of people, especially construction guys, are like, we're not paid for emotions. There's no crying and scaffold. We've heard it all.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if I come to you at 5 minutes until it's time to go, and I say, "Hey, I need you to work an extra couple hours," that stinks.
Yeah.
Nobody likes that feeling of, "Oh man, I had a plan." Maybe you didn't have plans, but you were excited to get out of there. But if I were to come to you at, say, 10 or 11 o'clock and say, "Hey, I really need some help. Can you work a couple extra hours?" "Oh, yeah, of course." What was the difference? It's just timing oftentimes helps people with their emotions. And sometimes you'll find out, as somebody's doing something that no longer needs to be done. But if you tell them, "Hey, everything you just did was a waste of time," that's an emotion,
Sure.
It's like a major downer. So sometimes if they're close to completing the task, just let them finish.
Mm-hmm.
And it's better for the morale and the overall team. And so if you don't manage where people are and allow people to be excited, or change things up sometimes, or different things that just you're managing people's emotions, keep them engaged, or even just allow them to try new things on their own.
Sure. Some of the teams that I've been on, like I mentioned, scaffold before, you get the low guy on the crew that he always has to stand next to the pile of material and hand it up to the guys that are building. But everybody wants to move up. They want to, or most people want to move up, and they want to try that position. Hey, I want to be on top. I want to be that lead builder. I want to be the guy standing out on the spacers and hanging out there.
And sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't.
Right. Yeah.
There's
Sometimes it's
just
appropriate.
moments where-
Sometimes it's not. And so, as a leader, you get to judge. Hey, is this the right time? Is this the right person for this time? But I think it was really interesting. It sounds like you're saying, part of that is managing the emotion. But I also heard you mentioning timing elements in there, and those would be some critical components of this. Delegating properly, because it's not always going to be a one formula fits every situation. So, go ahead.
Well, what about leadership in the home? I mean, I know when we've talked, we say, this doesn't just apply to you if you're trying to become a boss at work.
Yeah.
So can this apply to, say, my kids? I think there are times where I just kind of come in and I bark orders and I don't think about, their flow and what they were doing. They were headed here to do this. So a cool leadership tool that applies, I think, equally at work as it does at home is, instead of just like barking in orders, is something more along the lines of, do you have time to do this? Or like if I'm talking to somebody at work, it might be, hey, do you have capacity to do, to look at this with me or to do that?
Yeah, it's that powerful tool of questions coming into play again.
Not in a manipulative sense, but you're honestly asking the question.
Yeah, exactly. Not using a question to influence them improperly, but to mine the information. And really, I mean, there's a positive effect of that, right? It increases the respect if you are asking the appropriate question versus just barking those orders.
Yeah, and it increases their ownership as well. So when they respond in a positive way, yeah, I think I have some time for that. What did you have in mind? And then they start, now they're a collaborator. Now they're not just, hey, I need you to do this.
They've got buy-in. They're helping you to solve a problem. They're not some tool that you're throwing up against the wall to try and accomplish something.
Again, managing those emotions.
Yeah, that is fascinating. I love how these little details of it, kind of some key elements come out. I mean, I actually have naturally found myself doing that with my kids sometimes, where it's like, that's not what I would do, but it's not a big deal. Yeah, and I can definitely see where that makes sense, even in a work setting. My last question was, delegation often conjures images of the boss just, foisting his duties onto somebody else so that he can slack off. So my question is really, who's going to truly benefit from proper delegation? What dynamics do you see with that?
I guess everybody benefits from proper delegation, but let's take a step back and let's look at this in a very balanced approach. This comes down to position. I know you and I have talked about in the past Jocko Willink and Leif Babin's book, Extreme Ownership.
Yeah.
And one of their whole sections is about position. If you're too far back and you're telling the crew, hey, this is what I want you to do, you're not seeing everything because you're not in it with them. If you're too far forward and you're just like, you're here, you're not seeing everything again because there could be things going on, but you're in there swinging the hammer, or you're doing whatever you're doing.
Right, you're hitting that nail. You're not building the entire structure.
Yeah, and you're not seeing the problems that everybody's facing. So that proper positioning that he talks about, there's a really great chapter in that book about that. But when you are putting different people in the correct position, you're also needing to think about yourself as well. Like, where do you fit in there? So an inspiring leader is one that has no problem getting in the trenches. But if that leader's always in the trenches, what is he not doing? Well, he's probably not leading.
Right.
And then there's another aspect to this as well that I would call highest and best use. So part of putting people in the best position is putting them in their highest and best use, but you as well in your highest and best use. So imagine I own a company and I'm going to hire somebody to manage this project or whatever. And so I'm going to spend more money because there are fewer people, out of all the population that can do construction, there are fewer people that can actually manage that construction. So I'm going to spend more money on that person to manage construction. So if I just spent that money on that person, do I really want them pushing a broom? Not unless there's a really good reason for it. And some of the good reasons are to inspire other people, to do things. Like sometimes you'll see a superintendent get, grab a broom and start cleaning up because he's making a statement like, hey, this is unacceptable. If I have to get out here and do this, there's a problem. Or other times he's grabbing a broom and he's just helping out because, he just got done with a bunch of things. He needs to clear his mind and he just wants to be with his crew. Yeah. And that's not inappropriate either.
Yeah, that's interesting because as you were saying that, I was thinking about how the dollar value, what that person in that position is paid per hour and what they choose to do with their time communicates a priority. But then there's that element that you just kind of pulled back to and mentioned, it's what's the motivation, right? Because there's a difference between the pissed off superintendent who's shoving that broom around, and saying, hey, this is not cool, and the guy that's just laid back, connecting with the guys. Yeah. There's a whole, not only a priority that's communicated, but an attitude about it as well.
Little tidbit, the funny thing that I've noticed is the higher up you go, the more relationship is a huge deal. We're talking about positioning people well, within a crew. And, it's been said in other books, Good to Great is one of them. Get the right people on the bus, get the wrong people off the bus, and get the right people in the right seats. Okay. How do you get the right people on the bus? Like, how do you gather good people around you? Really, it's relationship. I mean, if you're treating people well, that's good. But if you know them and their likes, their dislikes, you set them up for success, about the things they care about, their family life, things like that. That goes a long way. If I go to work with somebody and I really liked working with that person and it's fun, it's more like hanging out with a friend while still getting a lot done and making money. When that guy calls me and says, hey, I've got a job for you, I'm more apt to go there than somewhere else. So fun little tidbit. But back on that highest and best use. So if you are trying to move up, kind of shifting the thought around, instead of from, I've hired you, what's your highest and best use? Okay, you've been hired. Now, what's my highest and best use? So there are times when I'm sitting here doing, maybe I've got 100 photocopies that I need to do, and and put this signage together or something like that, and then go out and place all that signage.
Sure.
Are there other people that can do that? That can't necessarily schedule and plan and order and do the other things.
Gotcha.
So that would be kind of that concept. It's like there are moments where, yeah, absolutely, I need to put the signage together. There's nobody else available that needs to be done, or or I've gotten all of my work done and I can do that. But ultimately saying, is there somebody else that can do this that would free me up to be able to do the things that fewer people can do?
Right.
It makes me more valuable.
It's sort of like what I'm seeing is sometimes it's a help to the team.
Yeah.
When you step in and do that.
Mm-hmm.
But conversely, highest and best use, sometimes it's inappropriate or it detracts from the
Or I'm not getting the stuff done that's going to help them in 2 weeks,
Sure.
or 2 months, or 2
and
years.
that's what I'm actually pointing to, is it's more that long term where it's like, hey, no, this is what I'm paid to do. This is what I do that nobody else does. And so it actually takes away from the team in the bigger picture.
I mean, really, do you want to go onto a job site where it's like, oh yeah, that superintendent's great. He's always sweeping with us. He's just a cool guy. Or do you want to go onto a job site where it's like everything just runs smoothly? I don't mind sweeping. We got people that do that, but I don't care. Stay in your office as long as everything runs smoothly.
Absolutely.
Those are the two extremes.
Right. Right. And most of us are going to wind up somewhere in the middle, especially as we're on that pathway of growing in that.
Yeah.
So, all right. Any last thoughts that you want to put on that?
Thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Folks, come back next time. We'll have more great stuff for you.